Yoshino grew up as the untouchable Yakuza princess of crime family, throwing tantrums as if she's daughter of Pablo Escobar. Her gaze was more terrifying than John Wick. Her grandfather went broke and made a deal with Tokyo's Miyama Syndicate, and she's thrust into an engagement with her heir, Kirishima. At first, Kirishima seems as charming and polite as Izuku from My Hero Academia. However, when his dark side emerges, he's more scarier than Muzan from Demon Slayer, and now she has to deal with this monster. The story began with a boy named Kirishima Miyama received a photograph, hoping the girl in it would complicate his life. Meanwhile, in Osaka, Yoshino asked her grandfather, Renji, about a tabloid article linking her to the heir of the Miyama Yakuza. She had never met the guy, so how could they be engaged? Renji casually admitted that he had spread the rumor to find her a suitable match. He even mentioned that the Miyama heir looked like his younger self. Although people admired Yoshino for her looks, they often judged her based solely on her appearance. Her grandfather encouraged her to visit Tokyo, assuring her that Kirishima was just a high school student and not an actual Yakuza member. Upon arriving at the Grand Miyama estate, Yoshino met Gaku, who immediately remarked that she looked like Renji. Feeling anxious, she asked about Kirishima, but she saw him standing right behind her before she could react. He introduced himself and offered to give her a tour, making it clear that she did not have to stay in the newly renovated house. Kirishima believed Yoshino was being forced into this arrangement and considered it an outdated practice. He doubted it would work out, but was still surprised when he heard she had decided to meet him. After transferring to Auron Private Academy, Yoshino felt drawn to Kirishima's presence, but remained convinced that her grandfather had manipulated her into this situation. She walked to class with Kirishima and noticed that he did not act like a Yakuza, which relieved her. During class, 3 girls approached her and asked if she was related to or dating Kirishima. They did not believe her when she denied it and slammed her desk. Her school life became uncomfortable, with students constantly staring at her. Kirishima, however, acted as if nothing had changed and was surprised to learn that he was considered popular, despite most classmates keeping their distance because of his Yakuza ties. Yoshino was unaware that the students knew about his background and wondered if they feared him. Kirishima brushed it off, casually saying that if the Yakuza ever caused problems, people could report them to the police. However, despite his carefree attitude, Yoshino wondered if the constant stares bothered him. His response suddenly turned cynical and his tone unsettled her, but he quickly returned to his usual cheerful self. That night, Yoshino could not sleep and spotted Kirishima outside her window, his clothes stained with blood. Instinctively, she hid, unsure of what to do. Panic set in as she realized the truth. Kirishima was part of the Yakuza. She tried to ignore it at school, convincing herself she was tired and imagining things. But then she overheard some girls whispering about her, calling her flashy and spreading rumors that she worked in the entertainment industry to pay off debts. It reminded her of how people had treated her back in Osaka. Later, while shopping with Kirishima, she said she needed to withdraw some cash and would be back soon. While alone, 3 drunk men approached her and grabbed her shoulder, trying to escort her somewhere. Before she could react, Kirishima appeared, grabbed one of them, and warned the others that she was with him. When the man resisted, Kirishima twisted his arm and smashed a bottle over his head. The remaining men hesitated as Kirishima kept beating one of them until Yoshino begged him to stop. Kirishima finally relented, patted the bloody man, and warned him. The man nodded frantically before being let go. As they walked away, Kirishima explained that Yoshino had lived a sheltered life in Osaka and did not understand Tokyo's dangers. Yoshino noticed the blood on his hoodie, and when he took it off, she was shocked to see his tattoos. Kirishima revealed them casually, and when he reached out to her, she slapped his hand away, feeling scared. He sighed and said he could not keep this up, leaving her confused. He had expected her to be spoiled and selfish, but he found her too ordinary and a burden after getting to know her. He suggested she earn money by working at a brothel, saying she could make 1,000,000 yen in 2 months. He told her to go home and inform her family if she refused because he was ready to start a gang war. Shocked by his twisted nature, Yoshino thought about leaving, but then she noticed mud on her shoes, the first sign of bullying. She wanted to tell her grandfather, but felt that it would not help. While cleaning her shoes, she wished she could go back home. Then her grandfather called, telling her to stay for a year, no matter how difficult things got. Renji then gave her a plan: make Kirishima fall so deeply in love with her that he would be willing to die for her, and then leave him mercilessly after 1 year. He shared his past, saying that 3 women had dumped him and even thrown him into a river. Taking his advice, Yoshino decided to go through with the plan. 2 weeks later, Kirishima spoke to Ewe about Yoshino, worrying that her grandfather would kill him. The next day, Yoshino returned to school, surprising him. She confidently threw her bag onto his desk and announced that she had sold her kidney for 4,000,000 yen, having it removed through endoscopy. She declared she was not returning to Osaka and did not care what he did next. Yoshino then confronted the girls who had bullied her, threatening to ruin their lives if they messed with her again. Kirishima, amazed by her boldness, stopped her from leaving and suddenly confessed his love for her. He was thrilled by the chaos she brought into his life. He proposed that they get married and that she should continue turning his world upside down. Yoshino, completely confused, wondered what was wrong with him. Yoshino had been sneaking around during lunch to avoid Kirishima because she wanted peace and quiet. But whenever she had a free moment, he was always there. Her kidney surgery had been causing her pain and the stress was overwhelming. She couldn't believe he had told her he loved her. The same guy who once suggested she should sell her body. His constant smiling made it harder for her to say what she thought. Of course, he was smiling right behind her. She jumped, wondering how he had found her. His answer? Probably love. But the truth was, he had planted a GPS tracker in her dictionary. Angry, she smashed the device, but he ignored her reaction and said his father wanted to talk. Yoshino nervously waited at home, but Gaku was busy, so Aoi and Sauta came instead. Aoi informed her that the daughter of Akaza Enterprises' president was missing. Akaza was a minor affiliate of the Zakuza clan and wasn't a big problem unless Yoshino was involved. She was ordered to stay with Kirishima until the girl was found, which she didn't like. Instead of staying home, Kirishima took Yoshino to dinner and watched her eat. His intense gaze gave her a headache, so she asked why he liked her. He laughed and said he loved everything about her, especially her sharp tongue. His words were sweet, but Yoshino sensed a hidden threat. No one had ever liked her before. He then showed her a photo of the missing girl, Shiori Akazawa, a 20-year-old student. Yoshino asked if the tattoos were real, and Kirishima mentioned that he had spoken to Shiori 2 years ago at a funeral. She had been a spoiled rich girl. Yoshino wondered if she should worry about being kidnapped, but Kirishima didn't think so. He wasn't directly related to Patriarch Gaku. Gaku had no children and was Kirishima's grandfather's older brother. When Kirishima was 12, he caused trouble, and Gaku was the only one who took him in. Later, Kirishima received a call. An Akaza associate had been found dead. The body belonged to a man who ran restaurants, including illegal gambling rooms where Shiori had been a regular. The killings made sense. The Zakuza clan controlled 70% of Tokyo, while their rivals controlled the rest. They had been in a bloody stalemate for over 100 years. After school, Yoshino got a ride home after buying a new hairdryer. Sauta told her he had never had a real conversation with Kirishima. They had met in middle school, but Sauta had heard about a violent incident involving Kirishima in 5th grade. It had been so severe that his parents couldn't handle him, so Gaku took him in. The fight had involved 20 kids, some classmates, others older students, all of whom ended up with broken bones. Yoshino found this disturbing. While stuck in traffic, Yoshino noticed a rose tattoo and realized she had seen Shiori sneaking into a building. She called Kirishima, who said Shiori's disappearance was probably staged. Her father had been hard to find lately, so they likely hid together, though Kirishima didn't explain why. Then he realized that the club Shiori had entered belonged to the Kirigaya Gumi, a group connected to Yoshino's family. That explained why no one had been able to find her. Kirishima's family was involved. Kirishima and Yoshino decided to retrieve Shiori. Gaku allowed them to go. Yoshino didn't like the loud club, but Kirishima had no trouble leading her through. In the VIP room, Shiori revealed she was planning to leave the country. She had cheated at Baccarat with the dead Akaza Enterprises member and the Filipino mafia, stealing 500 million yen. To stay safe, she had to pay for protection. Kirishima kicked the door open, having overheard everything. He introduced himself, sat at their table, and explained that Shiori's father hid because of her debt. He told Shiori to come to the Miyama office since she was causing problems for the main family. Suddenly, Kirigaya Gumi men appeared behind Yoshino and pushed her aside. Kirishima reacted instantly, stabbing one of them with a fork. A fight broke out. Yoshino, in pain, watched as Kirishima brutally attacked them. When Kirishima was stabbed and another man tried to hit him with a bottle, Yoshino smashed her hairdryer over his head, furious. Seeing Yoshino hurt, Kirishima snapped and repeatedly punched the man. Yoshino hit Kirishima on the head and told him not to kill someone with a bit of blood. She saw Shiori escaping, but Kirishima didn't care. He only cared that Yoshino was hurt. Later, they found out that President Akaza had been expelled and his daughter had left the country for her safety. Kirishima was beaten for causing trouble on Kirigaya Gumi territory. Still, he gave Yoshino 10 million yen, his share of the 500 million that had been split between the mafia and his family. They agreed to take the money and move on. Kirishima wanted Yoshino to have it after she sold her kidney, joking that he would sell his corneas if needed. Yoshino didn't want the money, just a new hairdryer and his company, which he gladly gave her. As they were leaving, Kirishima noticed a man on a motorcycle staring at them. He tried to ignore it and focus on Yoshino, but the image stayed in his mind. One evening, the girl Kirishima had been seeing asked if he had a girlfriend. Excited to talk about Yoshino, he showed her a picture, but she didn't like Yoshino's appearance and told him to give up on her. Kirishima refused, saying it would be fun to compete for her. Later, Yoshino felt like someone was watching her. When she woke up, she suspected it was Kirishima and wondered how he had gotten inside. Afraid he might try to harm her, she decided to change the lock and keep a knife for protection. That night, she sensed Kirishima's presence. His face was covered in blood. She prepared to defend herself but was shocked when he braided her hair. Reaching her limit, she tried to hit him, but he caught her hand and said he hadn't realized she was awake. She admitted she was afraid of him. After he apologized, she lightly hit him on the head and demanded to know how he had gotten inside. He confessed that he had made a copy of her key. Yoshino scolded him, saying he couldn't enter her room whenever he wanted. He agreed. Kirishima explained that he had sneaked in because he had only ever seen her angry and wanted to see her sleeping face. Yoshino told him she was always mad at him because he broke the rules. However, at that moment, she was more concerned about his injuries. He laughed it off, saying that Aoi had punished him for missing curfew. Yoshino thought she might be less angry if he followed the rules, but his disregard for them and his flirting with other girls irritated her. She knew he was a liar, just like her grandfather. Kirishima noticed she wasn't angry and asked why. She said it wasn't her problem. If a guy she liked had cheated on her, she would have killed him. Kirishima liked that idea. He wanted her to feel it strongly about him. He enjoyed every moment with her and wondered if she hated him. She explained that she didn't avoid him out of hate, but because she never knew what he would do next. She admired how he never changed. Suddenly, he pinned her down and said, "I love you too." Then he added that if he ever cheated, he would make sure she wanted to kill him. One day, Kirishima brought her a package from Osaka, which included a letter from her grandfather apologizing for the Knox Tokyo incident. She had also requested her father's old photos. Her father, who had been weak in fights and opposed to the Yakuza, had argued with her grandfather before leaving home. He later died in a traffic accident before she was born. Kirishima told Yoshino that her grandfather was coming to Tokyo for the League's meeting, a Yakuza summit. He showed her photos from past meetings, and she was surprised to see her grandfather with his men. She also noticed that Kirishima resembled Gaku. Kirishima explained that his grandfather hated being in photos, so the only pictures of him were from these meetings, and Renji was always in them. After the meeting, Renji joked with Gaku, stuffing candy into his pockets. Meanwhile, a man who had retrieved Yoshino's father's photos called her and offered to check her old room for more. Later, Yoshino met Takedo Hote, a family member close to her grandfather. He apologized for being busy and asked about Kirishima. Nervous, Yoshino described him as mentally strong but avoided mentioning his bad habits. Takedo suggested bringing Kirishima to Osaka for the summer, but Yoshino found the idea overwhelming. Since Takedo had raised her, he believed it was a good plan. Takedo wanted to assess Yoshino's relationship with Kirishima. She knew Kirishima was unpredictable and might fly to Osaka the next day just because he could. Shuma arrived and Yoshino took him shopping for extra clothes. He said he was only there to deliver the album, but she insisted he buy something for the night. After changing, he came out shirtless and Yoshino told him to wear a shirt. Kirishima was studying a picture of Shuma. Yoshino told Shuma to cover his tattoos. When he asked about Kirishima, she explained she planned to make him fall in love with her and then leave him. Shuma joked that she might already be caught in a Yakuza conflict. That night, Yoshino reflected on her feelings for Kirishima. Even though she was always on guard around him, she still trusted him. She wanted to return to Osaka with Shuma, but he offered to kill Kirishima for her. She refused and he agreed to wait. Kirishima met Shuma outside and warned him not to smoke in that area. He introduced himself and said he had come to pick Yoshino. Shuma asked if Kirishima had been following them, but Kirishima avoided the question, teasing Shuma for not noticing. He said he wasn't there to fight, especially with Yoshino's family, and if they married, Shuma would be his brother-in-law. Shuma, annoyed, asked who Kirishima worked for. Kirishima replied that he had known Renji would disapprove of him marrying Yoshino, but had still accepted it because he loved her. Yoshino arrived, realizing that Kirishima had cloned her phone to track her. She told him to call her instead, and he agreed. As she prepared to leave, Shuma grabbed her arm, suggesting she return to Osaka because he thought Kirishima was insane. Kirishima grabbed her too, insisting he was the best match for her. Shuma called him a stalker. Kirishima said Shuma had no say, but Yoshino defended Shuma as family and called Kirishima the outsider. Kirishima apologized. The following day, Yoshino met Shuma at the station. When he asked about Kirishima, she guessed he was at home. Yoshino noted that Shuma disliked talkative men. Though both thought Kirishima was crazy, Yoshino decided to stay and follow her grandfather's advice. Shama believed she would lose everything if she abandoned her pride, but Yoshino said she couldn't throw it away. Without it, she'd have nothing. Hearing that Yoshino would die for her pride made Shuma's eyes widen. He wouldn't die for that, but when she asked what he would die for, he pointed at her. She was then surprised when he pulled breadcrumbs from her hair, thinking they were bugs. Before leaving, Shuma hugged Yoshino, promising to return. She told him to do well in college, all while Kirishima secretly watched. The next day, the train was packed and Kirishima got close to Yoshino. She noticed his warmth and pleasant scent. Yoshino shared with Kirishima that she had always been chauffeured to school in Osaka, except when she walked with Shuma in middle school. Mentioning his name made Kirishima's bloodlust flare, but he smiled as if nothing had happened. In class, she wondered if he was bored of her. Later, while sorting clothes, she got irritated thinking about him and he appeared at her door, asking what was wrong. He delivered a package from Osaka, and when he saw she was packing for summer, he seemed cold, thinking she was leaving. She felt his pressure and asked if he wanted to kill her, but he hadn't grown bored of her. Yoshino asked if Kirishima hated Shuma, but he didn't know since he had never disliked anyone. She then suggested they were dating. Surprisingly, he didn't mind. His only condition was that if she dated someone else, she had to do it before him. He wanted to witness everything, kissing or making love, and then killed a man afterward to balance things out. She called him insane, and he realized jealousy had driven him crazy. He then offered to act normal for her, but she coldly asked if he was changing to please her. She confessed her plan to leave after a year, but said she would stay in Tokyo if she fell in love with him. He was surprised. She thought he could be her ideal man, but she clarified that wasn't enough to make her fall for him. Frustrated, she told him to stop pretending and go wild. Relieved, he declared his love for her and said he would always love her. She asked him to leave, needing a break to change and eat. The next morning, she caught a summer cold and took the day off. She told Kirishima not to check on her. Kirishima rang Yoshino's doorbell, sweating from rushing to get her supplies. After cooling off, he explained that he was skipping school to care for her. She declined his offer to go to the hospital, saying she just needed rest. Pushing him to go to class, he told her he'd text her every hour and be home soon. After learning her fever had worsened during lunch, he tried calling her but got no answer. Deciding to leave early, he handled a job for a client and called AOA to send someone to take care of it. The client was scared, but it didn't faze Kirishima. Arriving at Yoshino's place that night, he rang the doorbell but got no response. He picked the lock and found her struggling to breathe. Despite her complaints, he checked her temperature and apologized for being late. Seeing her fever was worse, he called for a car and rushed her to the hospital. During the ride, Yoshino couldn't help but notice the pleasant smell coming from him. The following day, Kirishima told Renji that Yoshino was fine and that he would take care of her, even if it meant being a stalker. Renji didn't mind. Meanwhile, Shumo, watching his boss leave for business, was determined to uncover his true intentions. Yoshino woke up around noon, relieved her fever had finally subsided. She was surprised to see Kirishima sitting by her side, having stayed with her since they returned from the hospital. Embarrassed by how she had looked while sick, she apologized for the awkward moments he had witnessed. Kirishima tried to leave, but she stopped him, offering to thank him with udon, knowing he hadn't eaten. Back at school, Yoshino became anxious about the upcoming exams, especially since math had always been her weak subject. Kirishima, who hadn't studied much outside of class, offered to help her. He had only reviewed his notes and assignments during class, which made Yoshino feel even more discouraged. How could she get into college when she struggled with basic math? Kirishima reassured her, joking that he'd handle all the calculations for her if they married. Yoshino remembered going to Yokohama after the exams because her cousin was moving there from Kyoto. Kirishima accompanied her to the station to ensure she and her cousin would be safe. He already had some intel, knowing Yoshino's father and her cousin's mother were half-siblings, and that her cousin, who was about to attend college, was a year older than Yoshino. Yoshino explained the complicated family dynamic, mentioning that her cousin's mother was the daughter of one of Renji's mistresses. There had always been some uncertainty about their blood relation, but Renji had never questioned it, raising her aunt as his own. Kirishima mentioned that Yoshino's cousin was majoring in international studies and came from a wealthy background. When they finally met her cousin, Tsubaki Akashigata greeted Yoshino warmly. Tsubaki complimented her, saying Yoshino had a lovely face like their grandfathers, though Yoshino didn't quite understand. She then greeted Kirishima, and Yoshino took the chance to introduce her cousin as his type, a fashionable young woman with big dark eyes, long black hair, and a beauty that other girls would envy. Kirishima complimented Tsubaki on her beauty, impressing her. The three chatted, and Yoshino learned Tsubaki had a country accent from Kyoto. Tsubaki shared that her family had always been from Kyoto and that there was a legend about Kyoto women marrying late. Tsubaki pointed out some sandals, but Kirishima beat her to suggesting them to Yoshino, who thought they were cute but worried they'd make her too tall. Later, Yoshino overate and Tsubaki teased her for always doing so. Tsubaki praised Yoshino's looks, comparing her to their grandfather, but Kirishima playfully said Yoshino was even more perfect. Tsubaki warned Yoshino about men like Kirishima, claiming they were cheaters, but Yoshino shot back that Tsubaki was no better, admitting she was seeing 3 men at the moment. Tsubaki then asked how far Yoshino and Kirishima had gone, making an awkward joke about sharing a man with Yoshino, which left them both stunned. While Yoshino stepped away for dessert, Kirishima and Tsubaki shared a private conversation. Tsubaki noted the clear differences in how Kirishima treated her compared to Yoshino, pointing out that he didn't enjoy talking to her. Before Kirishima could respond, Yoshino returned with her mango-shaved ice, and they headed back for the evening. On the way, Yoshino received a call from her teacher about forgetting to turn in math homework. With the deadline at 8 p.m., Kirishima quickly got her into a taxi. He told her he would escort Tsubaki back to her hotel, and the two spoke privately in a Ferris wheel. Kirishima brought up Tsubaki's father, a hospital director with questionable connections to crime and illegal organ transplants. He directly asked Tsubaki where Yoshino's kidney was, suspecting she had only paid Yoshino 4 million yen instead of taking her kidney. Kirishima had seen Yoshino's surgical scar and, after investigating the black market, concluded Tsubaki had never taken the kidney. Tsubaki asked why Kirishima was so obsessed with Yoshino. He responded that it was out of love. Tsubaki revealed she had bought 1,500 ml of blood from Yoshino for 4 million yen, draining her nearly to death. She tried to talk Yoshino out of it, but Yoshino insisted, saying she'd rather die than disappoint Kirishima. Tsubaki felt it was unfair to stop her. After their talk, Kirishima thanked Tsubaki, saying she was as charming as Yoshino. Tsubaki warned him that if he hurt Yoshino, he'd never see her again. The next day, Yoshino asked about their conversation, but Kirishima didn't answer. He then received a picture of Yoshino in a bikini from Tsubaki. Yoshino panicked, thinking he'd blackmail her, but Kirishima assured her he wouldn't. Tsubaki also received the picture of Renji and Gaku, as promised. While studying, Yoshino and Tsubaki were chatting. Tsubaki mentioned that Kirishima had once gone to Osaka to meet Yoshino at midnight, but never actually did. Tsubaki wondered if Kirishima had been interested in Yoshino since then. Yoshino disagreed, thinking it wasn't love but obsession. She felt that if she pointed it out, he might stop, which confused her. Tsubaki suggested Yoshino figure out whether Kirishima's feelings were love or obsession. As summer break began, Yoshino felt stressed. While meeting Kirishima, two girls suddenly ran off. Kirishima explained they were discussing an open campus event and he would handle visitors as part of the disciplinary committee. Yoshino was shocked because Kirishima had never followed the rules. She had thought the girls were confessing their feelings, but Kirishima said he always rejected such confessions. He told Yoshino she was his first friend and didn't meet anyone else. This surprised Yoshino, making her wonder if Kirishima didn't see her romantically and if her worries were unnecessary. At an event, Nao Shioda, a TV personality, pageant winner, and broadcaster, was congratulated for getting a job as an announcer. Someone asked why she broke up with her handsome ex Ozu. Nao explained that he didn't like her joining pageants. The group laughed and agreed with her, but Nao knew they secretly called her a schemer. She believed her scheming had made her the most successful in her group. The girls noticed Kirishima and he pretended it was their first meeting. In the bathroom, Nao remembered their brief fling when she had returned to Japan. Later, they met in the hallway and Kirishima commented that she had changed, advising her not to try too hard to fit in. He gave her his contact information on a business card from a high society connection. Yoshino invited Kirishima to the Bon Festival in Osaka and he agreed. He planned to go in July when Nao would be busy with a cosmetics event. In Osaka, Yoshino made Kirishima carry all her shopping bags. In the taxi, Kirishima said he liked seeing her smile, which annoyed her. They stopped when Yoshino saw Shuma drinking and eating takoyaki in the summer heat. Worried about the tension between Shuma and Kirishima, Yoshino quickly made an excuse to leave. The shop owner scolded Shuma for smoking in front of her store and chatted with Yoshino, surprised to see Kirishima. She asked if he was Yoshino's boyfriend, but Yoshino denied it. The women complimented Kirishima's looks and he charmed them with flattery. Afterward, Shuma was scolded again and the women gave Kirishima money before leaving. Shama remained suspicious of him. Meanwhile, Nao heard troubling news about her ex Ozu, who was involved in a criminal case with his friend. She thought about asking Kirishima for help. At Yoshino's house, the Soma Yakuza nervously greeted Kirishima. Yoshino showed him her room where he became interested in a trinket she had made in elementary school. He asked to keep it, and she gave it to him. Downstairs, Yoshino asked Yoshino to help prepare food. While she was away, Kirishima received a text from Nao who wanted to meet. Later, after dinner, Kirishima said he was going to a nearby hotel, but would return in the morning. While shopping, Shuma told Yoshino she was too soft on Kirishima and needed to be stricter, as she couldn't predict his actions. In the hotel, Nao noticed Kirishima's back tattoos and reassured herself he wasn't a Yakuza. She asked why he was in Osaka and he smiled, saying it was to see her. Nao smacked him, knowing he was lying. She admitted she had messaged him because she wanted to see him again. Kirishima mentioned he was spending time with someone he liked before heading to the shower. Nao then saw a picture of Yoshino on his phone. Kirishima and Yoshino rode together to visit a university early in the morning. Since Yoshino was considering returning to Osaka, she thought exploring the campus would be a good idea. Kirishima joked about being rejected, even though they had never been in a relationship. She gave him a new trinket attached to the house key she had previously given him, saying the old one had gathered dust. Meanwhile, Nao was shown around the university by two boys who admired her. They were heading to the same party when one of them mentioned that Miku had returned that morning and was rumored to have been seen with some guy. Nao dismissed the gossip, but while on the bus, she reflected on how she could never fall for someone like Kirishima, especially after seeing a picture of another girl on his phone. However, when she spotted him with that girl, she impulsively got off the bus to follow him. Since Kirishima went his own way, Nao decided to trail Yoshino instead, only to be stopped by her two admirers, who wanted selfies. Yoshino quickly noticed Nao and approached her, apologizing and asking for guidance around the university, assuming Nao was a student there. Nao casually brushed it off, saying they had been heading in the same direction. As they walked, Nao noticed curious stares from other students, but Yoshino remained indifferent. Nao found her unimpressive and mentioned she was from Tokyo, and had seen her with someone familiar. Yoshino was surprised that Nao knew Kirishima, but Nao found it odd how casually she referred to him. Nao explained that they had attended the same private school and briefly brought up Kirishima's past, including an incident where he had taken down multiple students after training at a well-known dojo. Their conversation ended with Yoshino taking Mayo's contact information before they parted ways. Back at home, Yoshino asked Shuma if he knew anything about Nao, but he had no idea. When she mentioned that she planned to revisit the university the next day, Shuma offered to join her since his exam was scheduled for the following day. Annoyed, Yoshino threw a pillow at him, insisting he should focus on studying instead of slacking off. But since he did not study, she invited him out for the night instead. Elsewhere, Nao stared at Yoshino's contact online, thinking she was flashy but naive. She wondered if Kirishima's taste in women had changed. Suddenly, her ex Ozu appeared to harass her. He had been introducing aspiring actresses and models to wealthy clients, taking a cut for arranging the meetings. To Nao's shock, he claimed to have proof that she had spent time with Kirishima. He also brought up rumors about her allegedly using drugs in America. Nao denied everything, but Ozu didn't care about the truth. He had the power to make it seem real. He blackmailed her, demanding that she lure Kirishima and Yoshino to a specific location without letting them know what was happening. He told her not to feel guilty about betraying Kirishima, claiming that Kirishima was the one who spread the rumors about her in the first place. The next day, Yoshino changed plans and decided to take Kirishima on a tour of Osaka instead of returning to the university. They visited the local aquarium and Yoshino shared her favorite foods and desserts with him. Kirishima was surprised to learn she had a driver's license and mentioned that he already knew her birthday, April 2nd. However, he didn't reveal much about himself. Yoshino tried to take candid photos of him, but he caught her in the act. Wanting to learn more about him, she asked when he had his first girlfriend. He revealed it was in 6th grade, but she was more like a patron than a romantic partner. His grandfather only gave him small portions of food, so he sought out girls who would give him money in middle school. But he had never officially dated anyone. As they discussed hobbies and favorite foods, Kirishima joked that their situation felt like an arranged marriage. That was exactly why Yoshino brought up these topics. She found it strange that they had never discussed such things despite their arrangement. Although she had no intention of marrying him, she also didn't want to remain completely ignorant about him. She was determined to see things through for the next 8 months and was prepared to wait. Suddenly, Kirishima grabbed her hands, pulling their faces close together. Just as he was about to say something, his phone rang. Apologizing, he stepped away to take care of urgent business. Back at her place, Yoshino explained Kirishima's sudden departure to Shuma, who suggested they stake out his hotel. However, Yoshino received a message and decided to handle the situation herself. Shuma questioned whether she was getting attached to Kirishima, but she denied it. If he was in trouble, she planned to make him pay for ditching their date first. Meanwhile, Nao sat by the window in Kirishima's hotel room. He tried to comfort her, assuring her she was more important than his packed schedule. She asked if she meant more to him than Yoshino and mentioned their encounter at the university. Surprised, Kirishima admitted that he already knew and had anticipated the meeting. While in the shower, he texted himself, setting Yoshino's picture as the screensaver, knowing Nao would see it. Furious, Nao wished for his downfall. But everything was going according to plan. Kirishima and Ozu both used women for money, but while Kirishima stayed within certain boundaries, Ozu took things further, making illicit videos and disposing of those involved. Although Kirishima disapproved of Ozu's methods, he knew Ozu was trying to manipulate Nao into setting him up. Kirishima got dressed and told Nao to take him to the meeting place Ozu had chosen so he could resolve the issue. Nao hesitated, worried about Yoshino since she had already sent her the location. However, Kirishima wasn't concerned. He had access to a copy of her phone and had redirected her. However, he hadn't expected Yoshino to call to inform him that she was already exactly where Ozu was. When Yoshino saw a red-haired man with a perm, Kirishima immediately became uneasy and told her to leave. The men they had fought before might recognize Yoshino, but Ozu probably wouldn't since Kirishima had kept her identity hidden. Even so, Yoshino insisted on staying involved. Shuma, riding his bike, checked his messages from Yoshino. Upset that she refused to let him join her, he received a call from Kirishima. Kirishima told him that Yoshino was hiding in room 211 of the karaoke bar and asked him to pick her up while he cared for something else. Furious, Shuma warned Kirishima that if anything happened to Yoshino, he would make him suffer a fate worse than death. With that, both of them headed toward their destinations. At the mansion, Ozu greeted Azami nervously, clearly intimidated. After Azami left, Yoshino introduced herself as Ms. Suzuki, reminding Ozu that they had met at a university social event. Ozu admitted he didn't remember her, but mentioned that he had found a social media profile that might belong to her. He briefly considered whether Kirishima had sent her, but quickly dismissed the idea. Instead, he was more interested in her appearance than her identity. The karaoke bar now reflected on the situation and regretted not blocking Yoshino's number. Suddenly, Shuma, furious to find Yoshino missing, demanded that Nao come with him. Outside, a group of thugs asked about Kirishima's whereabouts. When they threatened Yoshino, Shuma reacted immediately, taking down 3 of them with quick strikes. A knee, a punch, and a well-timed dodge. Just then, the red-haired man from earlier stepped in, effortlessly knocking out one of the thugs. Seeing Nao, he casually calls her cute and invites her to dinner. Before he could say more, Shuma yanked Nao away, insisting she come with him. The red-haired man turned to Shuma and asked if he was Kirishima. Shuma, unfazed, called the man curly and told him to shut up. That was enough to start a fight. The red-haired man knocked Shuma down with a single punch, irritated that his perfect perm had been disrespected. But Shuma didn't care about the man's hair or anything else. He was ready to keep fighting. Meanwhile, Yoshino sat inside the karaoke room, overwhelmed. She drank non-alcoholic drinks, trying to process everything happening around her. At the same time, Ozu, now drunk, stepped aside. His phone rang, and when he answered, he was told that Kirishima had disappeared. Alarmed, Ozu tried to make sense of the situation. Not wanting to let Ozu escape, Yoshino was about to follow him when her phone rang. It was Kirishima. They quickly exchanged updates. Yoshino, now furious, learned that Ozu and Kirishima had ties to human trafficking operations in Osaka and Kobe, something that hit too close to home for her. This revelation pushed her over the edge. Then Kirishima said something completely unexpected. He decided it was time to reveal something he had been keeping from her, his birthday. He confessed that he would turn 18 on November 13th that year, something he had never told anyone. He admitted that he didn't have strong food preferences but enjoyed eating with her. And while he had no particular hobbies, he said he would be happy doing anything she liked as long as they were together. Then even more shocking happened. He asked her to marry him. Yoshino was completely stunned, in the middle of a dangerous situation, and he was proposing marriage, but Kirishima was completely serious. He insisted they were meant to be together. In his mind, no other man would be right for her. He was the only one who truly understood and cared for her. Yoshino's reaction was a mix of shock and disbelief. Who proposes at a moment like this? But Kirishima remained firm in his belief that it was destiny. He then suggested a wager. Since he couldn't marry her right now, they would settle things another way. If he could take care of Ozu and the thugs before midnight, and if he could beat her in a game, she would agree to be his girlfriend. Yoshino was in a big crowd at fireworks festival when she saw her target. She quickly tore her skirt to run faster but felt frustrated because it had been expensive. Meanwhile, a group of thugs was searching for Kirishima. However, he caught two of them by surprise and harshly interrogated one. Yoshino then saw Ozu being dragged away by a thug. Earlier, she and Ozu had argued about how to find Kirishima. While held, Ozu told a story about a mysterious high school Yakuza named Azami Su. Azami had saved him from another gang a year ago, and strangely, that gang had disappeared without a trace soon after. After that, Azami never contacted Ozu again. Then, 1 year later, he suddenly appeared and asked Ozu for a favor. Before Ozu could say more, the thug headbutted him and called out Yoshino, who had been secretly listening. At the same time, Kirishima forced the thug he captured to call his allies and reveal their location. Then he sent them his GPS coordinates, saying it would be too much trouble to hunt them down individually. He told them that after what happened with Shiori, he could have destroyed their entire business, but had allowed them to continue for a while. Now he planned to wipe them all out that night. Back with Yoshino, the thug mistook her for Kirishima and threatened her. When he attacked, the lights suddenly went out, giving her a chance to fight back. However, the thug quickly punched her, knocking her down. As he prepared to finish her off, Yoshino called for Kirishima, giving herself enough time to escape. With the lights still off, Kirishima took down the thugs one by one in the darkness, until he came face to face with Azami. Meanwhile, Yoshino was in pain from her knocked-out tooth and was trying to escape from the last thug chasing her. She quickly came up with a plan and managed to get away. At the same time, Kirishima was trying to figure out why Azami was after him. Instead of answering, Azami asked about Yoshino. When he realized she was gone, he turned to leave, but Kirishima stopped him. He tried to convince Azami that Yoshino was just another girl, but Azami didn't care. They started fighting. During the fight, Kirishima managed to pin Azami to the ground for a moment, but Azami pushed him off and attacked with a knife. They struggled, and suddenly, Azami revealed his face and bit Kirishima. Kirishima finally recognized him but was shocked. How did he get a new face? As they continued fighting, Azami pulled the knife out of his wound and attacked again. When the lights came back on, Kirishima gained the upper hand. But then Azami suddenly said he was bored and didn't want to fight anymore. He turned to leave. Kirishima taunted him, asking why he wouldn't finish the fight. Meanwhile, in the parking lot, the last thug finally caught up to Yoshino. Thinking fast, she knocked him down with a bicycle and electrocuted him to make sure he stayed down. Back at a karaoke bar, Shuma was still fighting his opponent. He made a clever move and knocked the thug to the ground. Just then, the thug received a message from Azami. Frustrated that all their effort had been wasted, he ended the fight himself. However, before leaving, he warned Shuma not to call him Curly again. He also hinted that the Yakuza was dealing with problems inside their ranks and advised Shuma to quit before things worsened. At the fireworks festival, a beaten and bruised Ozu stood before Yoshino and Kirishima, ready for whatever came next. Kirishima insisted on sewing Yoshino's skirt at a bar even though she told him not to. He wanted to keep her underwear hidden. She was confused about why he had a sewing needle, but he showed her a bag from a convenience store. He had just bought the needle and the cold compressor in her face. Yoshino was annoyed, but Kirishima still couldn't stop thinking about someone hitting her. She told him to forget about it, especially since he had already beaten up the Yakuza member. That man might even be dead, but Ozu wasn't there for small talk. Yoshino told him where his apartment was, the center of the trafficking operation. Finding it had taken a lot of effort, and even Kirishima didn't know about it. After 3 hours of watching the place, Yoshino followed a car with a Tokyo license plate to a hotel. There, she saw Ozu with the punks who had been with Shiori Akaza. She didn't know what Ozu's connection was to them, but the Tokyo car meant it had something to do with Kirishima. Kirishima wasn't happy. Had Yoshino convinced Ozu to have dinner with her, Ozu denied doing anything wrong. He said he knew Nao and Kirishima had been together before and didn't want them to get close again. Kirishima got nervous, but Nao and Shuma arrived before he could say anything. He tried to act innocent while Ozu kept defending himself. Kirishima admitted he was impressed that Ozu never left any evidence of illegal activities. He had tried to find proof but failed. However, Ozu's family wasn't as careful. Kirishima remembered that Ozu's father was a top executive and his mother would be a prominent newscaster that fall. They looked like a perfect family, but Kirishima destroyed that image. He showed a video of Ozu's mother with another man. She had told Ozu's father she was working, but the man in the footage complimented her, saying he couldn't believe she had a college-aged son. Ozu got angry and threw the phone. Kirishima knew it was cruel, but he had planned it that way. He thought Ozu had no right to be angry since he treated women similarly. Kirishima had set up this meeting for Ozu's mother. Kirishima gave Ozu a simple choice: delete all the bad recordings of Nao and never contact her again. If he did that, Kirishima would decide what to do with the video of Ozu's mother. But Ozu didn't give up. He threatened to tell the police that a Yakuza was after him. He thought he could ruin Kirishima and Yoshino's lives. Yoshino and Kirishima looked at each other, and Yoshino calmly replied that she could destroy Ozu's life just as easily. Even if she couldn't prove he gave alcohol to a minor, she could find something else to ruin his clean record. Ozu was shocked to hear she was underage. He thought she looked older. Annoyed, Yoshino showed him her driver's license to prove it. She said that people who worried about their reputation were the ones who had something to lose, like Ozu. She had nothing to protect and wasn't scared to walk away. She was serious. Ozu, angry but defeated, admitted he lost. Nao had recorded everything, so he had to keep his word. With everything settled, Yoshino checked on Shuma, who was strangely calm despite being beaten up. He acted like it was nothing but was surprised that she had followed Ozu in a mini-truck. Embarrassed, Yoshino explained it was the only vehicle she could find. She needed to get to work without anyone knowing. Xiaoman got annoyed that she hadn't answered her phone. He got frustrated with her excuse, but she apologized. She hadn't expected Kirishima to involve him, thinking he would be fine. When she teased him about getting beaten up again, he grabbed her face. Meanwhile, Kirishima walked with Nao, who was upset about his methods. She couldn't believe Yoshino had put up with him. Kirishima, however, was more curious about whether Yoshino had talked about him to Nao, maybe calling him a handsome scumbag. But Yoshino had only called him an acquaintance and didn't seem interested in him. Nao told Kirishima he had no chance with Yoshino. She didn't think much of Yoshino's attitude either. Kirishima then complimented Nao, saying she was thoughtful, cute, considerate, and good in bed. But he also said she wasn't special to him. He said he would sleep with anyone, even strangers. His words made her slap him. But then she realized he had baited her into doing it. As she got into her taxi, she told him never to contact her again and planned to delete him from her life. When Yoshino arrived, Nao scoffed before the taxi drove off. Kirishima apologized for everything and was impressed that Yoshino had tracked him perfectly. Yoshino admitted she had followed him using the mini-truck the whole time. He hadn't noticed until now, though he had felt something was strange because the mini-truck had tinted windows. She had followed him initially, even watching him leave the hotel with Nao on his first night in Osaka. Later, Yoshino ran into Nao to college. She still didn't understand the situation but suspected Kirishima was planning something. She explained how she had found Ozu's apartment. Shuma had contacted real estate agents, which led her to an apartment rented by Ozu, the son of an Embrace Productions executive. She also discovered that Ozu went to the same school as Nao, and they followed each other on social media, helping her connect the dots. Kirishima then mentioned the tracking device Yoshino had given him. She was surprised he figured it out, but admitted she had been careless. It was her first gift to him. The tracker was sewn into a plush toy, costing her 30,000 yen. Now Yoshino realized Kirishima cared. He teased her, saying that sometimes he wanted to cherish her and sometimes tried to ruin her. She quickly chose being cherished. He admitted he was happy she was interested in him now. He said he preferred her hatred over indifference because it gave him a better chance of being with her. After winning their challenge, he asked her what he needed to do to be her boyfriend. Yoshino, flustered, suggested rock, paper, scissors. Kirishima agreed, and even though she was a pro, she lost both rounds. Kirishima celebrated, but Yoshino refused to accept it and demanded a best-of-3 match. Meanwhile, a mysterious man learned they were in Osaka. He was eager to deal with them. Yoshino visited her family's grave where her grandfather, Boss Somi, placed a can of beer on her father's grave. He joked that her father never drank because he was afraid of hangovers. Yoshino thought about how she would soon be the same age her father had been when he married at 19. She couldn't imagine taking on such responsibilities. She started feeling unwell because of the injuries she had gotten earlier. The boss noticed her makeup and suggested she try something bolder, which annoyed Yoshino. Later, Yoshino thanked Tsubaki for the makeup that covered her bruises. Tsubaki asked about her teeth and Yoshino said she had visited the dentist. Kirishima arrived and offered to help her find a dentist in Tokyo and carry her bag, but Yoshino refused. Tsubaki warned Yoshino that Mr. Renji had found out. Shama interrupted, saying he was not angry but told Yoshino not to lie. Tsubaki insulted him and the argument escalated. Yoshino reassured Kirishima that this was normal. Kirishima asked if this always happened and Yoshino remembered Tsubaki's first meeting with Shuma in a bathroom. Yoshino seemed distracted. Kirishima brushed an eyelash from her face and a jealous Shuma grabbed her hand. Tsubaki called him childish and Kirishima agreed, saying they acted the same. Boss Somai told a story about damaging a bike to cover up an accident. Kirishima laughed and Boss added that Miyama had once laughed at him but then punched him afterward. Yoshino thought about this and looked at Kirishima, who quickly looked away. A new guest arrived and Boss asked Yoshino to oversee the cleanup. She agreed and Shuma was told to go to the basement. In the cellar, Boss played golf. Kirishima saw blood on the wall and asked about the scar. Boss said it was from a fight with Shuma. Boss asked Kirishima about what he had done in Osaka. Kirishima admitted he had handled a personal issue but didn't explain further. Boss slapped him and demanded more answers. Kirishima said it was about his ex, not the Yakuza group or the entertainment executive's son. Boss blamed Kirishima for Yoshino's secretive behavior and told him to take responsibility. He warned Kirishima to take better care of Yoshino. Tsubaki asked if Yoshino had told Shuma about Kirishima. Yoshino said it wasn't a real relationship, just the result of losing a game. Tsubaki teased her and told her to be careful, saying Kirishima wouldn't force anything. Tsubaki warned Yoshino about Kirishima's charm, saying he could exploit her. Yoshino, not looking for love, ignored the warning. Then she wondered where Kirishima had gone. At park, Shuma and Kirishima argued about Yoshino. Kirishima said they were romantically involved. Shuma punched him, saying Yoshino didn't belong to either of them. Later, Yoshino told Tsubaki she had tracked Kirishima with a GPS keychain and found him in a park. She felt uneasy, grabbed a baseball bat, and confronted Kirishima. At the park, Shuma and Kirishima were fighting and Kirishima pulled out a knife. Yoshino arrived, tripped, and sarcastically told them to fix their shirts. She explained to Tsubaki that she used this trick with Shuma to stop fights. Yoshino playfully made Shuma flick her forehead and the conversation shifted. Kirishima said he would never hurt Yoshino. She remembered when Kirishima had complimented her but Shuma had reacted harshly. Yoshino scolded Kirishima for starting the fight and asked why he had confronted Shuma. Kirishima admitted that he wanted to claim Yoshino as his. Yoshino told Kirishima she had dated him not just because of the bet, but also because of her growing feelings. She said her relationship with Shuma had influenced her decision to date Kirishima and warned him not to forget that. Kirishima stayed silent and accepted her words. She told him and Tsubaki to leave so she could talk to Shuma alone. She promised Kirishima they would solve things once they were back in Tokyo. As Kirishima and Tsubaki walked away, Tsubaki commented on Yoshino's sharpness. He said Kirishima had tried to hide his injuries from her, but Yoshino didn't need such consideration. He suggested Kirishima invite Yoshino to study together after school, saying it was a regular high school activity. He ended with a remark about their interesting love lives. Meanwhile, Yoshino and Shuma talked about her relationship with Kirishima. Shuma criticized her for not making a clear decision, but Yoshino teased him about his past relationships. She admitted she was dating Kirishima, but wasn't sure about the future. Shuma joked that any man who wanted to marry her would have to be able to kill him first. Yoshino playfully said they could live together, but Shuma would have to quit smoking first. Annoyed, Shuma clicked his tongue. Kirishima recalled a fight with Shuma and Yoshino where she had told him to return to Tokyo. Kirishima called Tsubaki, saying he had been ringing Yoshino's doorbell for an hour. Tsubaki warned him to stop as it would only make things worse. Kirishima wondered if Yoshino was still angry, but Tsubaki said she needed time to cool off because of the knife incident. Tsubaki estimated it would take at least 24 hours and mentioned a dinner date with Mr. Renji. The next day, Kirishima tried to make amends by bringing simmered vegetables, but she didn't respond. He borrowed ingredients from Sada to bake, but she still didn't reply. Determined, he borrowed more complex baking supplies, mirror glaze, and cocoa butter, and made a special cake. He pleaded for Yoshino to open the door, apologizing and saying they needed to talk. Yet she continued to ignore him. After 48 hours of silence, Kirishima grumbled. A bald man said, "I don't care," while another asked about the food. Kirishima shrugged, saying it would spoil soon. Sada asked if Yoshino was still ignoring him. Kirishima explained that she usually forgave him after an apology. The bald man teased him, calling him a masochist. Kirishima wondered if Yoshino no longer cared about him. The bald man called him crazy. Kirishima joked about seeing a brain surgeon, earning a few smacks from the bald man. Kirishima knocked on Yoshino's door in the rain. Noticing it was almost 7 o'clock p.m., Yoshino finally opened it, surprised. He commented on her beauty, and she revealed that she had set an alarm for their return 3 days ago. Kirishima asked if it was over. Yoshino said it depended on him, and he admitted he didn't know why she was angry. Yoshino set some rules. Kirishima couldn't contact Shuma. without her permission and had to ignore him if there was trouble. She explained her frustration with his casual apologies, which made her feel ignored, and warned him of the consequences if it happened again. Kirishima said he might catch a cold. Yoshino scolded him but reassured him that they would handle everything together. Kirishima agreed, then picked her up, calling her beautiful and saying he could admire her forever. Yoshino teased Kirishima about his compliments and he said he was just being honest. He was glad she was wearing his gift. Yoshino explained that she wore it to avoid upsetting him, as she preferred jeans and rarely wore gifts. Kirishima joked that she kept them in case she needed bail money for him, and she clarified that he was the only one she worried about. Kirishima joked that Shuma would be perfect for the Yakuza, but Yoshino reassured him that Shuma was doing well. Kirishima said he didn't trust anyone and didn't want the Yakuza life unlike Shuma. Yoshino asked if there was someone else Kirishima liked more. He insisted that no one compared to her. She asked about his lack of friends, which made him ask about her past. Yoshino shared that she had avoided becoming a delinquent, even though people gossiped about her as a child. Shuma had kept others away. She then asked about his past. Kirishima said making friends was a waste since they hadn't grown up together. He wished they had attended school together. Yoshino joked that they could have been childhood friends, and Kirishima agreed, but she reminded him that they were a couple now. Yoshino asked what he wanted to do now that they were dating. Kirishima awkwardly asked if he could hold her hand, and she agreed. He noticed it was cold, but she said it was normal. She offered cream for his scar, but he mistakenly licked it, making her angry. She scolded him and refused to accept his apology about the perfect promise. A news report covered a dump truck crash. Yoshino tried to call Shuma, but he didn't answer. Kirishima reassured her, but she had to finalize a contract. Shuma finally called, downplaying the crash and explaining that it was part of internal chaos after the leader's arrest. Their grandfather was handling the situation. The scene shifted to the Kirigaya office after a meeting about the accident. The issue was quickly dismissed and Mr. Renji and Mr. Azuma left together. Azuma apologized for involving Renji, but Renji suggested drinks to relax. Azuma refused, saying those days were over. Renji joked about Azuma's past love for alcohol before leaving. Azuma muttered about how annoying the situation was. Later, Azuma spoke on the phone, reporting that the issue would be resolved by the weekend. The other person reassured him that the plan would work and told him to wait before dealing with the troublemaker. They promised to handle Renji and asked if Azuma was free that evening. The call ended with Azuma agreeing. A subordinate pointed out a wine stain on his sleeve and offered to clean it. Azuma dismissed it, saying he would throw the item away. The scene shifted to a red-haired man who found Azami badly beaten. He commented on Azami's punishment for involving the Yakuza family's granddaughter and warned him to stop acting recklessly. He handed Azami a high school entrance exam notice.